Nazi Germany was known for its aggressive behavior towards other countries. They wanted to expand their control and power, so they often used threats. In 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and this marked the beginning of World War II. This invasion was a key event that showed the world how serious Germany was about war and power.
While World War II was going on, countries wanted a stronger weapon to win. This started a race for the atomic bomb. The United States was part of this race. They started a special project named the Manhattan Project. This was a big effort to make the world's first nuclear weapon. They brought together the best scientists and engineers for this mission.
After the invasion of Poland, something important happened in Germany. Scientists there found out about nuclear fission. This was a big discovery because it showed how to break apart atoms and release a lot of energy. It was a surprise because it could mean making very powerful bombs. Other countries, like the Allies, started to worry about what Germany might do with this new science.
Yes, and because of this fear, many scientists left Europe. They came to the United States to escape fascist regimes. Among them was the famous Albert Einstein, who wrote a letter to President Roosevelt. In his letter, he talked about the danger of atomic bombs being built by Axis powers. This letter was very important because it helped the U.S. start its own nuclear program to make sure nobody else got the bomb first.
After scientists like Einstein alerted the U.S., the government decided to act on the idea of building a superweapon. They formed the Advisory Committee on Uranium. This group was made up of scientists and military officials. Their job was to find out if a new type of bomb could be built using uranium. Later, this committee grew into something bigger and more organized. In 1941, it became the Office of Scientific Research and Development, or OSRD.
Around this time, there was a big event that affected the U.S. This was the attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan in December 1941. This attack led the United States to join World War II. With the U.S. now fully in the war, the need for strong weapons became even more urgent. It was then that the Manhattan Engineer District was set up, which was key in moving the project forward.
After Pearl Harbor, the United States needed to keep its nuclear work secret. New York City was not safe because it was too crowded and near the coast. So they decided to move the labs. Oak Ridge in Tennessee, Hanford in Washington, and Los Alamos in New Mexico became the new locations. These places were far from big cities, making them safer and more secure for the work they had to do.
J. Robert Oppenheimer was chosen to be the leader at Los Alamos. He was a smart scientist who knew a lot about physics. His job was to guide others to make the bomb. There were many challenges, like figuring out uranium and plutonium. These materials were hard to work with. The scientists had to learn how to separate them and find the best way to use them for the bomb.
Oak Ridge was where they worked mainly with uranium. Uranium-235 had to be separated from uranium-238, which was a difficult job. They used big machines, and many people worked there to make sure they got enough uranium-235. In Hanford, they worked with plutonium. They had to learn how to make it because it didn't exist naturally. A lot of time and effort were spent on solving these problems to help make the atomic bomb.
At Los Alamos, all the research and experiments came together. The scientists had to solve how to make the materials into a real working bomb. They faced difficulties in handling dangerous substances safely and figuring out how to start the explosion. Oppenheimer and his team worked for long hours every day. They were determined to succeed, knowing how important their work was for the war effort.
These labs each played a different but important role. They all had to work together to get the results they needed. Without this teamwork, it would have been hard to solve the tough problems that came up. The people there were not just sure about how to make the bomb, they also had to make sure everything was kept secret. The success of moving the labs helped the project move forward.
The challenge of figuring out uranium and plutonium took many tests and trials. They slowly made progress, learning from each other. Oppenheimer was central to this with his leadership. The work was stressful, but the scientists knew the importance. They didn't stop until they found ways to finally solve the problems. The establishment of these labs and the hard work there was crucial to the success of the project.
Now that the labs were up and running, the goal was to isolate uranium-235. This was a hard task because uranium-238 looks almost the same as uranium-235. But finding them and separating them was important for making the bomb. They used very big machines called calutrons to do this job. Many people spent long hours making sure that enough uranium-235 was collected for one bomb.
While some scientists focused on uranium, others worked on a new element called plutonium. Plutonium was not found in nature, so they had to create it from uranium-238. Once they had plutonium, they needed to figure out how to use it for a bomb. This was a big challenge too. But the efforts paid off, and by 1942, President Roosevelt officially gave the green light for the project to continue.
The scientists faced another challenge related to critical mass. They had to learn how much uranium-235 was needed to start a chain reaction. If they used too little, it would not explode. But if they used too much, it could blow up by accident. They had to be very careful and do a lot of tests. After many tries, they finally figured out the right amount needed for a controlled explosion.
With their knowledge of plutonium and uranium, they began working on a bomb that would use these elements. The team spent long hours figuring out how to make them work together in a powerful bomb. The experiments were tough and dangerous, but the hope was to end the war with these new weapons. By solving all these puzzles, they made sure that the U.S. would have the upper hand in the war.
The Trinity test was a very important moment. It was the first time an atomic bomb was tested. This happened on July 16, 1945, near Alamogordo, New Mexico. At 5:30 in the morning, the bomb exploded. It created a huge and bright flash of light. Then there was a shocking wave of heat and a large cloud shaped like a mushroom. This explosion showed how powerful the bomb was, changing the world forever.
After this test, the world entered a new age, the atomic age. During this time, President Roosevelt had passed away and Harry Truman became the president. In April 1945, he took over as the leader of the United States. By then, the Allies had succeeded in defeating Germany. Yet the war with Japan was still going on. The test earlier showed the U.S. the power they could use against their enemies.
In July 1945, leaders from the Allies met at the Potsdam Conference near Berlin. They talked about what to do next, especially with Japan. It was clear that Japan needed to stop fighting. They wanted Japan to surrender without any terms. This was called an unconditional surrender. The leaders said if Japan did not agree, they would face serious destruction. But Japan did not listen, and they kept on fighting in the war.
After Japan's refusal, the U.S. decided to use atomic bombs to force Japan to stop. On August 6, 1945, an American plane dropped a bomb named Little Boy on Hiroshima. This bomb used uranium-235 and caused a lot of damage, destroying much of the city. 3 days later, another bomb called Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki. It was a plutonium bomb and caused more destruction. These bombings led Japan to finally surrender.
The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were very powerful and caused many deaths. They killed more than 200,000 people. The shock and destruction from these atomic bombs were too much for Japan. On August 14, 1945, Japan started to talk about surrendering. This was big news because it meant the end of World War II. The surrender of Japan was formalized soon after. This ended the long war and brought some relief to the world.
Although Japan's surrender marked the end of World War II, the use of atomic bombs created new worries. People realized the huge power of these weapons. The bomb's effects were not just immediate, but also harmful over time. Many feared the start of a new age called the atomic age. This time was marked by countries racing to get nuclear weapons, changing how countries looked at war and peace after World War II.
Hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. We have more historical episodes coming your way. Think about the long-term effects of the nuclear age. It's important to reflect on how the world has changed since those times. Let's learn from history to better understand our present and future.